Have you ever sat in that heavy silence at a family dinner? Here on Bonds and Stories, we retell those moments, honest, everyday, sometimes controversial. Every story is a mirror. Subscribe, join the conversation, and maybe find a little healing. The morning after a desert windstorm, I woke to the dry rattle of sand against the turquoise front door and the faint clink of the wind chimes on the porch. Jack made those chimes from old abalone shells he'd brought back from a West Coast job in '79, polished to a dull glow, drilled by hand in our first apartment's kitchen. When the wind ran through them, the house felt less empty. I brewed coffee, opened the door to the pale light, and watched the sun lift over the sandias like a copper coin. Through the screen, I saw Brooke on a step stool by the porch beam, tucking the chimes into a cardboard box with a label that read, "Minimal Entryway." The label had Brooke's straight, decisive handwriting. She'd drawn a little checkbox beside it. She checked it. "Careful with those," I said. My voice came out softer than I meant. "Jack hung them his last summer. They stay by the door." Brooke smiled without looking at me. She wore a linen romper the color of wet cement, sleek ponytail white earbuds. "They're pretty, Evelyn, just busy. I have a concept for the front cleaner lines, more air. We'll put a matte black sconce and a narrow bench, very modern desert." "They stay by the door," I repeated, setting my mug on the rail. "That's not a design question." She slid one earbud out. "We're refreshing the vibe, that's all. People evolve. Homes should too." I could have told her this house had already evolved on our backs over years of night shifts in budget lumber and drafts that rattled the windows like freight trains. Jack and I had bought the lot for $13,000 when everyone said the soil was wrong and the neighborhood would never fill in. We hauled adobe blocks in the dark with a borrowed pickup. I sewed my scrubs until the fingers of the gloves showed through. A house is not a vibe. It is a spine, a shelter, a ledger of effort. A truck rumbled to a stop by the curb. Travis stepped out, finally home from an early site visit. My boy had Jack's shoulders and my mother's stubborn mouth, a bright engineer who could read a map like scripture. He stood on the flagstone walk, eyes flicking from Brooke on the stool to me on the porch. "Morning," he said, easy neutral. "Morning," I said. "Ask your wife to hand back the chimes." Brooke laughed, a single note, not cruel, just tired. "Travis, tell your mom I'm not throwing anything away. I'm just relocating to the garage until we rethink the entry." He rubbed his jaw the way he does when he wants two things at once. "Mom, Brooke's been working on the house all week. Can we—" "The chimes don't move," I said. "Neither does the porch light, the family photos, or Jack's hat on the peg by the door. I'm not arguing taste, I'm stating facts." Brooke reached into the box and plucked the string of chimes by its ring. The shells clicked softly, the sound of dishes in a sink. "Respectfully, it's not just your porch anymore." The air went very quiet. A crow glided over the neighbor's cottonwood. A bus sighed at the stop down the block. Travis stepped onto the porch and set a hand on the stucco column as if he were steadying the whole house with it. "Don't talk to my wife like that," he said. His voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Not in her home. The words landed hard, carving a line across the morning that would not sand smooth. Her home. I watched them hang between us like dust motes that refused to settle. I looked at my son, truly looked. The last time we'd stood in this exact place, he'd been 9, fresh off the school bus, holding a cardboard model of a bridge. He'd set it on the rail and told me the trick to strength was in the truss, distribute the load, Mom, so no one piece breaks. He'd built forts out of cereal boxes in the living room and promised dead serious to design me a porch swing that wouldn't creak. I could still see the boy under the stubble and the overtime and the careful adult restraint. "This house has my name in its bones," I said. "Your father's sweat in the mortar. If you want to change the light bulbs, hang your prints fine. You don't take the first sound I hear every morning for 30 years and call it clutter." Brooke's smile returned thinner now. "It's a porch, Evelyn. A porch is for welcoming people, not curating the past." She had a talent for packaging a judgment as a kindness. That could be useful in her work, I imagined. It had no place on my steps. Travis lowered his hand from the column. "We're trying to make it feel like a home for us too, that's all." I took a breath, found it tight in the center. I wasn't going to plead on a porch I'd swept through monsoon grit and pollen storms, not to a woman who labeled my doorway minimal entryway like a mood board. I reached for the chimes instead. Brooke didn't resist, but she did not let go either. For a beat, we both held them, and the shells made a delicate, stubborn music between our fingers. "Let go," I said. She did. The little ring warmed in my palm. I hung them back on their hook and set my coffee on the rail beside Jack's old baseball cap. The cap was sun-bleached where the brim had curled from years of sweat. It had outlasted 4 roofs. Travis looked past me into the house. The front room had been freshly painted a color Brooke called bone, which had meant moving every picture off the mantel. Jack grinning under a base he shouldn't have caught without a license. Me in a floral dress standing by the borrowed pickup our first week here. Travis in a Little League uniform glove too big for his hand. Those frames now leaned face down along the hallway, an odd little cemetery of us. "I'm late," he said finally quietly. "We'll talk tonight." He kissed Brooke on the temple and she closed the box around the empty space where the chimes had been for 10 minutes. She carried it inside without asking if I wanted it in the garage. When the door swung shut, I could smell primer and lemon cleaner and something too sharp like new plastic. The wind lifted again and the shells sang on their hook higher now as if relieved. I stood with my hand against the stucco and let the morning heat begin to press through the shade. The neighborhood stirred a jogger's steady breath, a distant lawnmower, the burr of a single-engine plane tracing the river. In the kitchen, the counters gleamed with Brooke's brand of clean, the sponge tucked at a precise angle in its tray. The magnet clips that used to hold grocery lists and recipes had been emptied. A minimalist print of a saguaro leaned against the backsplash, still in its plastic sleeve. I set the coffee beside the sink and wiped a ring of dust from the windowsill with the side of my hand. My finger came away gray-brown, the color of adobe when it crumbles. I thought of Travis on that porch at 9, explaining how a bridge fails not all at once, not even under a single heavy truck, but in slow, quiet ways. A loose bolt, a hairline crack, load that shifts from one beam to the next, until something that looked fine yesterday gives with a sound you'll never forget. I rinsed my hand and turned off the tap. The house went still the way a person holds their breath under a doctor's stethoscope. The wind chimes out front answered for it, a small, stubborn voice. I opened the drawer where Jack used to keep rubber bands and found it organized into labeled trays. Batteries, pens, miss. Not an offensive system, not mine. On the fridge, Brooke had taped a new calendar with color-coded blocks for workouts, client calls, date night, declutter. In the corner, someone had written front entry finalize. The box around it was checked. I pulled the cap from the rail and set it by the door brim forward, as if Jack might grab it on his way to lift one more thing that didn't want to be lifted. Then I stepped onto the porch, leaned into the sunlight, and listened to the shells count the wind. The house stood the way it always had, dusty, stubborn, holding more history than the fresh paint could bury. I pressed my palm to the turquoise door until the heat from the wood rose into my skin, then let it fall to my side. The chimes answered again, not loud, not pleading, simply there. Inside, the coffee had gone cold. By noon, the heat had worked itself into the stucco and made the whole house smell like warm dust and lemon cleaner. Brooke moved through rooms with a roll of blue painter's tape on her wrist and a phone tucked in her back pocket, stopping to click photos as if the living room were a client project. She'd queued up a playlist called Desert Minimal, all soft percussion and synth, and each new track felt like another coat of primer. She started with the windows. Out went the gauzy cotton curtains I sewed when Travis was in middle school. In came blackout panels that hung like theater drapes, swallowing the afternoon glare. She peeled the magnets off the fridge grocery lists in my handwriting, a recipe card from Jack's sister for green chili stew, and slid them under the sink in a bakery tin. The mantel emptied next, Jack grinning under that illegal base. My floral dress beside the borrowed pickup, Travis with his too big glove. She wrapped each frame in bubble and set them carefully into a box labeled in the same decisive hand, archive. Archive, I said. Brooke glanced up. Only until we curate the right balance. Balance, I repeated, as if tasting a spice I didn't like. Between who and who? She returned to taping trim. Between memory and what we need now. Travis texted in from the field, late lunch, long day, apologetic emoji, he knew I wouldn't comment on. When I looked out at the porch, the chimes were still where I had left them, trembling, though the air had gone still. I touched the ring once as I passed a finger to a pulse. By late afternoon, Brooke had a small crew of friends in the house workers who arrived with wine and white sneakers and the kind of brisk cheer that makes a space feel staged. They spoke in campaign shorthand and timelines in the same breath-trading notes about HOA bylaws. One of them held up her phone to scan the light in the room. This wall could take bone or meringue, she said. Bone, Brooke said. Bone is calm. I stood at the kitchen island, reseasoning a cast-iron skillet, out of habit, heat-low oil, moving slow like syrup. I wasn't cooking anything. I wanted the smell of something mine in the house. The skillet smoked. Brooke's tall friend waved her hand in front of the smoke detector in case it thought to complain. Sorry, I said. It'll pass. It's fine, Brooke said brightly as if I were a neighbor she barely knew. We're ventilating. They opened the back slider and let the heat rush in. Through the doorway, I saw Mrs. Ortiz wave from her yard over the low block wall. She had a watering can in one hand and 6 grandkids in her eyes. You surviving Evelyn, she called soft enough that only I would hear. Like a cat in a kennel, I said. She smiled with only one side of her mouth. Set your limits before somebody sets them for you. Then she wagged the watering can toward the open door. Close that before the swamp cooler gives up for good. We closed the door. When the paint cans arrived, 2 gallons bone, Travis still wasn't home. Brooke's friends rolled the color in long, economical strokes. The old eggshell gave way without a fight. I stood useless with a damp rag and watched the room shift tone by degrees like a face losing blood. The mantel bare now threw back a clean line of light. "Where do you want the photos?" I asked. Brooke didn't stop rolling. "Garage for now. Safer in the heat than on the floor." "The garage is an oven," I said. She shrugged. "Short term. We'll be careful." I carried the archive box to the garage anyway. The air hit like a hairdryer. The concrete floor had collected heat all day and now gave it back. In the corner by the camping cooler, Brooke had stacked 2 more boxes, Miss, and seasonal. On top sat the bakery tin with my magnets inside. I pushed the archive box onto the shelf and slid my hand along the spine of it, as if I could feel a pulse through cardboard. A fly zigzagged in the square of light beneath the garage door. For a moment, I imagined Jack standing right there with a screwdriver in his fist, clean sweat on his temple, reminding me to keep the top shelf for lighter things. I went back in. The living room looked like a model home for a couple who were never messy in photographs. The first bottle of wine had emptied itself into stemless glasses, and someone had started talking about calendars and deliverables. "Travis's mom is sweet," one of the women said, not thinking I was within reach of her voice. "Very involved. She means well," Brooke said, still painting. The roller whispered along the wall. "We're just setting new boundaries. She still treats it like her house, you know. She forgets we live here too." The word "we" stuck to me like a burr. I wiped the rag against my palm until lint collected in my lifeline. They finished the wall and stood back. "Bone," the tall woman said, pleased. "So much calmer." She turned to me with a professional smile. "Don't you love how open it feels?" "It feels different," I said. "Different can be fine." "Exactly," Brooke said. "Change is good." The party that evening happened without a name. Cars nosed into the curb one by one until our block glittered with unfamiliar windshield glass. A Bluetooth speaker appeared on the mantel where the family pictures had been, and for an hour the house exhaled the kind of laughter that comes easiest when people have not yet had to find the bathroom. Someone pushed the coffee table aside and unfurled a rug Brooke must have ordered, while I still believed rugs waited for lives to happen before they arrived. I came home from the hospital. An old nurse friend had been admitted with pneumonia, and found the porch light turned to a warm gold I didn't recognize. Inside, a neon sign washed the full room in Rose B&T's loft. The letters bent like a wink mounted where Jack's smile usually lived. A glass tipped in the kitchen. Red soaked into the corner of my Navajo rug like a spreading stain of sunset. "Just a few people," Brooke told me, almost dancing the apology. "We were due for a housewarming. You've got work friends, I've got work friends." "I had co-workers," I said. "They retired or they died." She laughed as if I was being clever. "You should sit. We'll make you a spritz." "I have tea," I said. Travis appeared at last, sunburnt and rinsed with dust, his forearms mapped with the day's work. He hugged me with one arm and left drywall smell on my shoulder. "Big day, Mom," he said, looking past me to the light box on the mantel. "Looks good, huh?" "It looks new," I said. He kissed Brooke on the top of the head. "Nice sign." "A placeholder," she said. "Just until we find the right art." I moved through the rooms collecting glasses, the old choreography of a host, though I had not invited anyone. In the hallway, the family frames leaned against the wall as if they had been told to sit and think about what they'd done. I knelt and turned one over. My face in the glass looked like a woman who hadn't slept in a week. Near midnight, the house thinned. The last guests lingered in the doorway with shoes in their hands. Brooke's closest friend stayed to help scraping wax from a coaster with her nail. Brooke stood in the kitchen with her phone to her ear, her back to me. Her voice dropped to a whisper, softened in the way people do when the person on the other end needs coaxing or consent. "I can't do this much longer," she said. "She's always there. Watching, judging. We talked about an active adult community, no drama, right? Travis will come around if it's framed as a safety thing." My hand closed around the stemless glass I was holding. The glass ticked. "She's attached to the house," Brooke went on. "Too attached. It's not healthy." I set the glass down. It made no sound on the cork trivet. Travis walked in, then, still toweling his hair from the quick shower he takes when he's past tired and trying not to show it. He saw my face, then Brooke's, then the phone. He turned off the speaker with his thumb, and the room lost its last excuse to feel it still belonged to the party. "What's going on?" he asked. Brooke slipped the phone into her pocket. "Nothing. Logistics." I looked at my son. "Do you want me out?" He opened his mouth, then closed it. He folded the towel and set it on the counter the way Jack would leave a tool exactly where it should be, even when he was too weary to think. "We need to make it work for everyone," he said. "For everyone," I repeated. He put his hands on my shoulders like a steadying brace. "Let's talk in the morning, when we're rested." The morning did come, as mornings do. I made coffee in the quiet kitchen and set 3 mugs on the table because setting one would have felt like a dare. When they sat at last, Travis on my left and Brooke across, I placed the sugar in the center and let the chimes on the porch speak their small pieces. "I'd like to talk about space," I said. "Not style, not mood boards, space." Brooke's smile belonged to a person negotiating with the bank about a rate she already knew she'd get. "I think we're on the same page. We want you comfortable." But there are options that could make your days easier somewhere with amenities, a pool, classes, a shuttle. We toured a place near the foothills, gorgeous views. I didn't ask for a new view, I said. Sometimes change is gentler when it's chosen early, she said. You won't have to worry about maintenance. Travis can stop stressing. We can. Travis cleared his throat softly. Brooke. She lifted her hands and surrendered palms clean. I'm saying this with love. I built this place with Jack, I said. I can name which studs creak in monsoon season. My legs still take those porch steps. I am not a guest. If you want to swap a lamp, you ask. If you want to host, you tell me. The photos go back up. The chimes stay where they are. That's the baseline. Brooke's mouth thinned. She turned her spoon in her coffee a slow, perfect circle. If this doesn't feel right for you, we aren't forcing you to stay. I know, I said. Travis stared at the table as if a blueprint were embossed there, invisible to the rest of us. He tapped one finger where the north wall would be. I have a job, I said, and when they looked puzzled, I clarified, keeping this house upright. That's the job. No one argued. The coffee cooled the same way coffee always does, ignoring the mood around it. A minute later, the neighbor's sprinkler came on a soft rush like applause. Brooke stood and gathered 2 empty mugs and carried them to the sink. She set them down quietly, careful not to chip what wasn't hers to break. The rest of the day folded itself small. Travis left for a site visit. Brooke opened a laptop and took a call with a client who wanted more heat in the campaign without more budget, which is to say they wanted weather. I went to the laundry room and sorted towels by habit and found myself in front of the high shelf where Jack used to keep everything he didn't want, lost, rubber bands, string a cigar tin full of screws. The tins were there, neat, labeled in Brooke's handwriting now. I ran my thumb along the edge of a manila folder until the pad of it felt raw. In the back of the shelf, a battered shoebox leaned duct-taped into submission. I slid it forward and lifted the lid. Inside lay a scatter of life warranty cards, a postcard from a road job in Gallup, a courthouse receipt pinned with a paperclip, 3 envelopes with Jack's block letters, one addressed to me. I didn't open them. I put the lid back on and eased the box into its space near the wall. In the quiet laundry room, the dryer hummed from nothing just because it had been set to do so. I pressed the button to stop it and stood in the little room listening to the house breathe. In the evening, I took the family frames from the hallway and wiped each one until the glass shone. I set them along the mantel where the neon had glowed and watched the room reclaim the shape of people I could name. The roller lines on the wall were invisible now that the paint had cured. The collarbone did what it promised, it calmed. I stood a long time in that calm, not moving it along and not letting it move me out. When the wind rose after sundown, the chimes on the porch answered shell to shell, the sound small and certain. The turquoise door held the day's heat a little longer and then let it go. I woke before the swamp cooler had a reason to hum, the house still cool from the hour, when the desert remembers how to be kind. The sky over the Sandias held a seam of pink like a cut that hadn't yet bled. I poured coffee into a travel mug, took Jack's old key from the ceramic dish by the door and slid it into my pocket. It had lived there for years under rubber bands and spare screws, a small silver weight I'd learned to ignore the way people ignore a tooth that aches only when you bite wrong. The streets were empty enough that every traffic light felt personal. I drove west toward downtown, the radio low, the morning news reading itself to an audience of insomniacs and bakers. Storefronts still had their security grates down. A man with a broom hosed last night's dust toward a drain. The sign for Rio Grande Credit Union blinked once, then steadied. Inside, the air was 12 degrees cooler and smelled like carpet and toner. A teller with gray at her temples recognized me from the kind of account that never bounces and never grows. "Morning, Miss Cole," she said. "You're early." "Needed a quiet errand," I said, holding the key out. "Safe deposit." She checked a ledger, nodded, motioned me toward the little booth past the vault where light falls without warmth. "In that narrow room, you can hear your own breath." She set the metal box on the table and left me alone with it. Her footsteps fading into the way banks keep a sound like lullaby for money. The key turned with a practical click. Inside, a stack of papers wrapped with a rubber band that had given up some years ago and now lay slack. 3 photos the size of postcards, a letter folded twice with my name in Jack's block capitals, and a second key taped to the inside of the lid with a note in smaller letters, "Recorder." I read the letter first. "Ev, if you're here, you needed paper more than talking. The north frontage driveway porch front room sits on the adjusted lot from the year we argued with the survey flags. Quitclaim puts that parcel under your name, Monroe Clean. The back parcel's the old shell I parked with Travis for taxes while we waited on the county to catch up. If anyone moves to sell mortgage subdivide lease, without your say-so, in writing trust springs and pulls both under one roof in your name. Don't explain it twice. Show it once. J. Short sentences like a man tightening bolts so they won't back out. I set the letter beside the photos, Jack at the fair with a paper cone of fry bread, me in a sweatshirt on a ladder painting trim that never stayed white, a picture of Travis at 9 squinting holding the cardboard bridge. I slipped the quitclaim and the lot line adjustment into an envelope the teller gave me, then the trust instrument Jack had drafted and notarized the year his back started bothering him in a way that made me watch him carry things. I slid the recorder key into my pocket with the first. When I stepped back into the sun, the heat came up off the sidewalk like breath. I drove 2 blocks to the county recorder, a low building with glass that made the morning look more honest than it was. A man in a tie with a coffee stain helped me file the correction that had waited too long on the shelf of our life. He stamped, scanned, handed me a receipt, and pointed me toward a clerk who said the words effective index and series number as if they were parts of a prayer. On the way home, I called Richardson's locksmith, the number still on the sticker inside our hall closet. He answered with his last name and the sound of the shop TV calling the weather. "Mrs. Cole," he said. "Been a minute." "Doors due," I said. "Front only." "Front," I said, "and the garage into the kitchen. I can be there by 5. 5 is fine." By the time he pulled his van into the drive, the sun was tilting toward Neighborly. Brooke was on the back patio with her laptop and a glass that sweated citrus, her voice turned toward a client convincing them air had color. I didn't invite her to the front. I stood with Richardson under the turquoise eaves and pointed to the deadbolt and the latch and the door that fits better on damp days than dry. He worked without comments, the soft grammar of a man who has fixed more locks than arguments. The new cylinder went in clean. The key he cut looked like every key until you turned it and the tumblers agreed. "You want them keyed alike?" he asked. "Just the front together," I said. "Garage separate." He nodded, then added a third, a little brass number. 1 for the old mail slot. It still sticks. When he finished, he set 3 small manila envelopes on the hall table. 2 keys for the front, 2 for the garage, 1 for the slot. "You lose one, call me not the boy who drives around with blanks like candy." I paid cash because it can still say thank you louder than a card. He tipped his cap toward Jack's old hat on the peg and left a footprint of dust that looked like a blessing until the next sweep. Brooke came in as the door shut. She looked from the manila envelopes to my face to the lock with a lobby smile you give at a hotel when they hand you a key that isn't your floor. "Project," she asked. "Maintenance. We have a system," she said lightly. "I can add it to the dock so we all have access." "I've got it," I said. She stood there a second, then went back to the patio as if the air were cooler out there, or the conversation in her headphones more reasonable than the one in my hall. I put 1 front door key on Jack's ring and slid the other into my pocket. The garage key I set in the small dish where the rubber bands used to live. I closed the door, turned the new deadbolt, and felt the clean thunk carry through the timber like a truth you can knock on. We ate separately because some days go that way even when nobody meant them to. Travis texted that he'd be late again. Survey overruns a lane closure nobody planned for. I washed a plate that didn't need washing and dried it anyway, then stacked the mail in a pile and straightened the pile. At a little past midnight, headlights slid along the living room wall like a fish under a dock. Brooke's key scratched at the lock, then hesitated, then scratched again. The knob turned and stopped. A pause. A second try that ended the same place as the first. Travis Brooke said, not loud, not quiet, "It's not working." He tried his key because that is what you do when something makes less sense than it should. The deadbolt held. He knocked once, a polite sound, then a second time, impatient. "Mom," he called. "Everything okay?" I turned on the porch light and opened the inner door so the screen stood between us like courtesy. Travis looked tired in the way men do when all their stamina went to the part of the day they were paid for. Brooke's mouth held a line that asked to be softened. "I changed the front," I said, "and the garage into the kitchen." Brooke's eyes moved to the lock, then back to me. "Why?" "Because this portion of the house is mine," I said. "Not a feeling. On paper." Travis studied my face the way he studies a cracked culvert looking for where the first weakness began. "You could have told us." "I'm telling you now," I said. Brooke's hand went to her phone. "We can't be locked out of where we live." I took the envelope with the recorder receipt from the hall table and brought it to the screen with Jack's letter and the stamped correction. I passed them through the gap where the screen latch gives if you pull. Travis read faster than Brooke. He always has. When he reached the line where Jack's claws tightened, he exhaled once through his nose. Brooke's eyes tracked the stamps as if they were a trick of ink. "This is complicated," she said. "It's documented," I said. Travis rubbed his forehead, a line deepening there. I knew the day he learned division. "We need to do this right." "I agree," I said. He pulled out his phone and called the non-emergency line because his head likes people who carry notebooks. Deputy Harris arrived in a cruiser that hummed like restraint. He listened to the words we had and the papers I had and ran his finger down the names until the names matched the parcels and the parcels matched the map. He was careful as if he were walking the edge of a roof he didn't own. "Ma'am," he said to Brooke, almost gentle, "this section is Mrs. Cole's to secure. I can't compel her to give access." Brooke looked at Travis. "We can't sleep in the car." "There are beds," I said evenly. In the back, you have a key to them. Nobody liked that sentence, but it sat where it had to. Deputy Harris tipped the brim of his hat the way men do when the decision is made, but not cruel. He left us the report number nobody would need if nobody wanted to need it. The cruiser rolled away and the street went back to being a street. Travis put his palm on the screen as if to feel the temperature of the house. "We'll talk tomorrow," he said. I nodded. Brooke didn't say goodnight. She kept her eyes on the lock as if it might apologize. They walked down the path the way people do when they are moving through two kinds of dark at once. I turned off the porch light, turned the deadbolt, and set the papers back on the table. The house held the key sound, the way a chest holds a breath, then let it go. I made tea because the body believes in certain rituals long after the mind stops insisting on them. The wind chimes answered once, twice. The turquoise door warmed my palm and then cooled under it, the wood taking my heat and giving none back. The morning slipped past on little domestic errands that didn't require permission, watering the rosemary in a clay pot, shaking the dust from the entry rug, setting a fresh dish under the soap. I kept the front key in my pocket like a stone. Around 10, the chimes on the porch rang once, though the air was still. When the phone did the same, it wasn't wind. Mrs. Cole, a woman asked, gentler than a bill collector, tighter than a friend. "This is Carmen from Southwest Infrastructure. We haven't seen Travis since Monday. Is he with you?" "He isn't," I said. "I'll let him know you called." She paused as if listening for a clue in the quiet behind my voice. "We're just concerned." After we hung up, I sent a message. "Your work called. Check in." The little status dot stayed gray. Near noon, Mrs. Ortiz texted a photo from across Central Avenue Brook, on the sidewalk outside Frontier Restaurant, lips tight, talking to a tall man in a blazer who held a folder like a lunch tray. The caption read, "Agent something Whitaker." "She's bartering with the sun." In the picture, Brooke's hair was perfect in the wind, a detail that somehow made the whole thing feel less accidental. I wiped the countertop with a cloth I'd boiled soft a decade ago, laid it across the oven handle to dry, and told myself that talking to an agent could mean anything. Curiosity, insurance, a friend's recommendation. People hold a dozen small reasons in front of the one that matters. At 3, a knock at the turquoise door came scented. I opened it to a woman with a perfume that arrived a beat ahead of her voice. "Vanessa Allen," she said smoothly, a hand outstretched as if we were meeting at a gala. The bone-white sunglasses on her head made her dark hair shine bluer. "Brooke's sister. We should talk." "We're standing," I said. She smiled with all her teeth. "May I come in?" "No." She exhaled the way people do before delivering a kindness they've set aside time to resent. "Evelyn, you've made your point with the locks, but there's a larger point you're missing." She touched her stomach in a motion so practiced it looked like choreography. "My sister is pregnant." The word didn't hit so much as float like a balloon released too early. "Congratulations," I said, because it requires nothing to say. "Do you want your grandchild sleeping in a car?" In this heat, Vanessa tilted her chin toward the street as if it were evidence. "Brookie's sick every morning. The stress isn't helping." "Which morning?" I asked. "Monday, Tuesday." "Excuse me." "You said every morning." She blinked, recalibrated. "You know what I mean. Early days, fragile. She needs stability." "There is a bed in the back," I said. "There is a key to the back." Vanessa's smile thinned. "You're not hearing me." "I am," I said, which is different from agreeing. A shadow crossed her face and was gone. She slipped the sunglasses back over her eyes as if they could double as armor. "You'll regret this." "I'll live with it," I said, and closed the door gently so the shells on the porch weren't startled. Travis didn't answer his phone. At dusk, the chimes counted the wind like a metronome for a song nobody else knew. I watched the porch light pick up moths until the bulb hummed, then went to bed with the letter Jack had written still folded on the nightstand. Sometime after midnight, my phone shook itself awake. The caller ID said unknown, but the voice was mine to recognize. Mom Travis said words soft around the edges. "It's me." "Where are you?" "A motel off Central," he said. "The one with the fake cactus in the lobby." "Don't worry," he added too quickly. "I'm fine." "You sound thirsty." He laughed without humor. "I sound like television at 2 a.m. I'll sleep it off." "Call your boss in the morning," I said. "Right," he said, the word leaning sideways. "We're just Brooke and I, rough patch." The line filled with the underwater music of bad air conditioning. We said goodnight like people setting something heavy down to pick up later. In the morning, Paula called from Tucson, her voice wrapped around a question she tried to unwind gently. Mom Travis texted me at 4. He asked about Brooke's timeline. He said she was late. He sounded confused. "He sounds like someone living in a room that smells like old ice," I said. "He'll come by. I can drive up this weekend." "We're not to the driving stage," I said. She breathed out relief and worry braided. "Okay, keep me posted." Around noon, the key turned in the back door. Travis walked in carrying a grocery bag that wasn't heavy enough to hide anything useful. He'd shaved but missed a line under his jaw. His eyes had that careful brightness men wear when they've slept less than they'll admit. "Can I?" He pointed toward the fridge. "Help yourself," I said. He poured water into a glass and drank it like news. Then he reached into his jacket and pulled out a thin stack of papers folded twice, edges already soft. He set them on the table with both hands, the way you lay down something that could break someone you love. "I found these in Brooke's tote," he said. "I was looking for her car key. It wasn't snooping. The apology arrived before the offense." I unfolded the papers. Emails printed in hard, tidy fonts. Subject: South Parcel exclusive right to sell draft. A cover letter from Whitaker Realty with a bullet list that read like a menu valuation. Assumptions: comparable sales, staging recommendations, rush timeline. An unsigned exclusive listing agreement with blank lines for a seller's initials, beside clauses about access and authority. On top, clipped separately, sat a limited power of attorney drafted for a signature that looked too neat to be mine. "Where did she get this?" I asked, though the question was not one a mother should have to ask a son about his wife. She said it was just to price things out. "You know," he added, seeing my face just in case. He swallowed. "Then I called Vanessa. She said Brooke's pregnant." He stared at the word pregnant as if it would behave if he watched it. "She said you knew." "I was told on the porch," I said. He waited. When I didn't offer the rest, he found it himself. "You don't believe it." "I haven't been given reasons to." He turned one of the pages around to show me a timestamp. "She met Whitaker yesterday at Frontier. Vanessa texted me later, said Brooke had been sick that morning. Only yesterday she told me it started last week." He pressed his palms flat on the paper until the veins rose like a blue map. "I don't know what's true." I brought Jack's letter and the stamped correction from the recorder. I set them beside the stack Travis had found. The table looked like a desk in a town where people still do business with their hands. He read slower this time because the words built the floor under his feet. "So the front parcel porch entry front room is yours," he said quietly, "and the back parcel's in my name. But if anyone tries to sell without your consent?" "The trust springs," I said. "It pulls both parcels to my name." He blinked. "That's sudden." "It's simple," I said. He reached for the glass and didn't lift it. He stared through the water as if it might reorder the world into more manageable shapes. "I thought I was protecting her," he said, "and it wasn't an excuse." "I know what you thought," I said. For a minute we sat in the hum of the swamp cooler, the air moving because a machine insisted. Travis rubbed the heel of his hand against his eye. When he dropped it, he looked younger than the beard allowed. "I can't find steady ground," he said. "Then stand on paper," I said, and slid the trust on top. When people fight about houses, they fight about stories. Paper is a different language. He nodded once. "The motion meant I heard you not. I'm fixed." He gathered the emails into a careful stack. He didn't put them back in his jacket. He laid them on the table as if the table could hold them better. He looked at the fridge, at the empty magnet clips, at the bare mantle still the color of bone. "I'll ask Brooke." "You'll tell Brooke," I said. He almost smiled. "Right." He stood, then sat again, the motion of someone who remembered he'd brought one more piece of something. He reached into the grocery bag and set a pharmacy test on the table in its plastic sleeve unopened. He didn't say a word. Neither did I. He slid it back into the bag. In the afternoon, the house settled the way houses do and heat little noises that sound like decisions. I wiped the table twice and left the stack of papers exactly where it was, not to forget, not to burn. I walked the length of the hallway and set the family photos upright. Dust bloomed where the frames had leaned. When I came back to the kitchen, Travis was still at the table, but he'd turned his chair to face the porch. The chimes answered a light breeze with a sound like coins in a pocket. "Mom," he said without turning, "if I made this mess bigger by thinking I was fixing it, I'm sorry." "You can be sorry and also fix what you can hold," I said. He nodded again, the same precise acknowledgement he'd give a foreman on a site where the plan needed another brace. He stood, tucked the agent's packet under his arm, and walked to the back door. His shoulders had the set of a man going to lift something that might not want lifting. After he left, the house went quiet but not empty. On the counter, the glass left a ring. I wiped it, and the ring came back a faint oval that needed time more than elbow. Outside, a heat haze shimmered above the driveway until the concrete looked like water you could step into. Near 5, a car slid to a stop out front. 2 doors opened, then closed. The chimes gave one polite sound as if a hand had brushed them in passing. I set the recorder receipt on the table on top of Jack's letter and smoothed the edge with my thumb until the paper lay flat. The turquoise door kept its color. The lock held its tongue. The house for once did not flinch. The car out front idled long enough to make the chimes talk to themselves. I set Jack's letter and the recorder receipt square on the kitchen table, pressed the edges flat with my palm, and walked to the turquoise door. When I opened it to the screen, Brooke stood on the flagstone with a man in a blazer who held a leather folder like it was the thing that made his jacket make sense. "Ms. Cole," he said, polite measuring. "Whitaker. We spoke with your son about a valuation on the rear parcel." "We didn't speak," I said. Brooke tucked hair behind her ear as if the wind were being rude. "We're clarifying ownership," she said. "For efficiency. For access, Whitaker corrected softly and pointed his chin toward the side yard as though paperwork follows the path a person takes to the door. I brought the documents to the screen latch quick claim, lot line adjustment stamped and indexed, trust instrument with Jack's block letters and the notary seal that had outlived 2 county clerks. Whitaker's eyes tracked the stamps the way men who keep ledgers watch totals. Brooke's gaze stayed on my face bright with the kind of certainty a mirror gives back. The front parcel is mine, I said. On paper. The back parcel is in my son's name. Any conveyance requires my written consent, today, tomorrow, any day. That's not an argument, it's ink. Whitaker took a small step back, the way people do when the ladder they were about to climb was never leaning on a wall. Then there's been a misunderstanding, he said, already holding the folder like it was lighter. We'll revise our file. Brooke bristled. She can't lock us out of half our life? You have a key to your rooms, I said. Use your rooms. Her voice sharpened. You are making this unlivable. The porch has held worse weather, I said. Tires crunched gravel at the curb. Deputy Harris stepped out of the cruiser he drove like it was borrowed. He'd shaved, and the line of it made him look as if a manual he trusted had been updated. He took off his hat and nodded at Whitaker, then at me. Afternoon, he said. We got a call. I made one, I said. Documents presented to a third party without authority. I handed him the limited power of attorney. Someone had drafted with my name printed in a tidy script I have never owned. He read it slowly. You could hear the minutes pass. A dog barked 2 streets over. A bus sighed and pulled away. The wind hit the chimes once, twice. He looked up at Brooke, then down at the signature line again. This doesn't match the specimen we have on file, he said, mild as weather. Brooke's mouth opened, then set. I didn't file anything, she said. Someone did, he said. I'll take a report. Whitaker cleared his throat into discretion. I'm going to excuse myself, he said, already turning. Ms. Allen, when your family sorts out title, we can revisit. He chose the word family like a path through a canyon, narrow, safe, not his land. Brooke watched him go, then faced me as if the air between us were a negotiation table. You can't keep Travis from making decisions. Travis can make all the decisions he wants, I said, with his name, not with mine. The back gate clicked. Travis came around the side of the house, hair-damp, shirt clean, the kind of careful you put on when you know something requires it. He looked at Brooke, at Deputy Harris, at me through the screen. I saw Whitaker's truck, he said. We're not doing this. Brooke turned to him. We were verifying options. We could clear debt upgrade. Stop living like it's 1999. Don't, he said soft. The forms aren't yours to sign. She pivoted to the point that had bought her a day everywhere else. I'm pregnant, she said, tone flat like a card that always turns up the way you rehearsed. Travis held her eyes. We went to the pharmacy, he said. You left the bag in the car. A beat passed that had more in it than speech. The chimes gave one small answer. She looked away first. I thought it would move things along, she said. Deputy Harris lifted his pen. He didn't comment. He wrote the words people say when the truth runs out of costume. When he finished, he tore the card and handed Brooke the pink copy and gave Travis a nod that said, this can stay a report if you keep it a report. Tonight, he said, you stick to the portion you have rights to. Tomorrow, you each get advice that isn't from a doorstep. Don't make me come back for behavior. He tipped his hat, climbed into the cruiser, and left the street quieter than he'd found it. Brooke stood very still, hands empty. She looked past me into the front room where the mantel had the shape of photographs again. For a second, she seemed tired of the thing she'd been trying to be. Then she turned, walked down the path, and drove away without the soft of a wave. Travis didn't speak until her taillights were gone. When he did, his voice was low and steady, a man reading an elevation that told him exactly what grade he was standing on. I'm sorry, he said. I know, I said. I thought I could balance it, he said. Like a bridge spread the load. I didn't see where I put the weight. We've built on worse dirt, I said. He nodded at the papers in my hands. Keep those out, he said, as if the documents themselves were a kind of weather that might cool the room. Then he went inside and sat at the table with the trust in front of him as if it were not a verdict but a tool. The next days ran without ceremony. Whitaker mailed a letter that used the word withdraw twice and without prejudice once, which is how professionals say no hard feelings to a file. Vanessa stopped texting. Brooke packed the back rooms methodically, boxes marked kitchen and office, and in thinner pen misc. Travis carried them to a car he'd borrowed from a friend who owned more patience than horsepower. They did it in the early evening when the light forgives details. When the last box left the threshold, Travis stood with his hand on the door jamb, a man who knows where wood gives and where it holds. He didn't say goodbye because goodbye is a word for airports and phone calls, where you need the other person to promise you their next breath. He looked at me the way my boy used to look at a thing he'd just fixed, wary, proud, aware it could break again if you thought you were finished with it. After the house breathed differently, not larger, truer. I brought the archive box in from the oven of the garage and unwrapped each frame. Jack went back above the mantel, grinning under the fish he shouldn't have kept. The floral dress had softened in the glass, like old fabric remembers the body. The Little League glove was still too big for the boy in the photo. Bone paint stayed bone. It did what color does when you stop telling it what to mean. Mrs. Ortiz came by with a pie that leaked a little at the crimp. We ate slices on the porch steps with forks that didn't match, and she told me about her nephew who thinks he can tile without a spacer. The chimes threaded our pauses. When she left, she touched the door with the back of her fingers the way people test bread. Travis found a place near Paula, a small apartment that smells like new carpet and someone else's idea of clean. He called on Sundays without scheduling at the line opening to traffic sounds and the exhale of a window unit. Some weeks we spoke of nothing, oil changes, which peaches look real, a road crew that found a turtle under a Jersey barrier. Some weeks he came for supper in a shirt he'd ironed, himself sleeves rolled with intention. He left early those nights because the road back asks more of a man than a couch does. The house gathered itself. I oiled the hinge on the screen so it would quit complaining, sanded a patch of rail Jack never got right, and scrubbed the ring the glass had left on the counter until the faint oval surrendered. The turquoise door got a fresh coat that looked loud in the can and right on the wood. I rehung the chimes 2 inches to the left where the wind finds them better. The sound traveled farther down the block, and the neighbor's dog stopped barking at the mail slot like it owed him money. Paula's kids painted rocks on the back patio one Saturday. Owls, suns, 3 versions of a cat who has never lived here and left them to line the rosemary like sentries. Travis helped me re-level a step that had always kicked the heel of anyone proud. He set the level on the tread, watched the bubble settle, and tapped the edge with a rubber mallet until it agreed with itself. He didn't say a word about balance. He checked it again, nodded once, and brought the mallet inside so the monsoon wouldn't rust it where it stood. Evenings the Sandias went the kind of pink that makes tourists stop mid-sentence. The front room took that light like a compliment. Sometimes I rayed in Jack's chair with the lamp he wired, crooked the cord still wrapped with the tape he preferred. Sometimes I sat on the step and let the day thin itself without asking me to account for it. When the wind rose, the shells spoke in their language of small certainties. The door under my hand held warm from the late sun, then cooled as the stucco sighed off the heat it had stored for me. The house did not forget anything. It did not forgive or refuse. It kept what we put into it and gave back what it could shade at noon, a cool tile floor on a hot afternoon, a place for paper that means what it says. In the quiet breath found its regular measure. The chimes counted it. The turquoise door kept time. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. If this story resonated with you or made you reflect, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to share them in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next story.